7:38 morning to you. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. We love to get you involved, lots of views and things. But I'll tell you what's driving me mad.
What?
At home at the minute, because we have lots of interesting discussions that my other half suddenly starts going on about, well, what do you think about this? What do you think about, I think this, I think that. So I said last night, and gone to bed, I said, I don't want to hear it. So if you want to say that, GBNEWS at GBNEWS.uk.
I told you when I was on holiday, people coming up to me and saying, GBNEWS at GBNEWS.uk. So it's something that we're both becoming famous for saying.
Yes, there you go. Let's run you through the papers this morning. Start with the Times. It says Boris Johnson wants the first flight taking Channel migrants to Central Africa to leave in the next month.
Guardian is also saying that plans to send Channel migrants to Rwanda have been widely condemned, with critics calling the plan inhumane.
The Express takes a favourable view towards the PM's Rwandan scheme, noting the vow to end the Channel migrant crisis.
And the Mirror criticises the Rwandan migration scheme, calling it inhumane and doubting that it's actually going to work.
Onto the Mail, Boris Johnson has vowed to do whatever it takes to push through his immigration plan.
So let's go through the insides of the paper. Well, not just the insides of the papers, I suppose. With Joanna Williams, Polly Mackenzie, welcome back. Thanks very much. Joanna, the Ukraine invasion and the Russian parading of a captured Briton.
Yeah, so this is the story of Aidan Aslin. He's a 28-year-old man from Nottinghamshire, and he went over to Ukraine to fight for Ukrainian liberation, essentially to fight against the invading Russian forces. He was involved in the defence of Mariupol, which is the place we've heard so much about on our TV screens over the past few weeks. And sadly, he's been captured by Russians. His picture is on the insides of many of the newspapers this morning. He's in a terrible state, quite frankly. I mean, looks absolutely awful, really dreadful. But I kind of think this is an important story to flag up, because I think there's a bit of a danger in the UK right now that we're kind of becoming a little bit bored, dare I say, of what's going on in Ukraine, or we kind of think that it's over and it's done now, and it's clearly not. And this man's terrible face, I think, really brings home to us the reality of war and reminds us that this has not gone away. This is still happening.
Do you know, I don't think we're bored, do you? I know we're in the news business, so we talk about it more than maybe
I don't
lots
mean
of people.
bored, but other stories have taken place, for example, and that was
war fatigue. So.
I think it's just other things are now happening in the world. I mean, we went for a period of about 4 weeks where this was the main story. Of course it was, you know, and then slowly, I think it was the P&O ferry story was the very first thing that then pushed the Ukraine war off the front.
And then the cost of living crisis.
Yes, of course, and of course that was bound to be the case. But like I said, I'm just really concerned that we don't forget about it, that we don't assume it's over. And I think there's a real danger that we kind of almost think, well, the Ukrainians have won the moral high ground, and the Russians have retreated from some places.
But it ain't over yet.
Exactly. And the danger is the Russians are actually regrouping and are just planning a much harsher pushback in the east.
Yeah, onto the Guardian, Polly. Obviously, we spent the best part of a couple of years in lockdown. What were people doing? Because there's no baby boom.
No, I remember at the beginning of this, the Prime Minister and a number of other thick people suggested that we would have a baby boom because people would be indoors, they wouldn't have anything to do, so they'd probably just go around making babies. I think it's... At the time, I thought it was completely misguided, and it turns out that I was right and the Prime Minister was wrong, because actually the financial precarity of the pandemic meant that people, because they've got access to contraception, they might have had plenty of sex, we don't know, but they haven't turned that into babies. You know, people think of that, you know, obviously there was a huge post-war baby boom, but that was post-war once it was over. I think we need to think about how we encourage and enable people to have the families that they want. People don't really have kids if they can't afford them, as a general rule, and people were so worried about their financial situation during the pandemic that they didn't. The reality is, I think people, with the cost of living crisis, you just mentioned it, Stephen, like, people aren't going to be having kids, and we know that, that there is a real problem with our birth rate in this country, and I think we need to think much more carefully about what we're doing to younger people. We're putting up the interest rate for student loans. It's incredibly difficult to buy a house, to rent property.
I mean, our population's going up and up and up. I would have thought fewer babies was probably a good thing at the moment.
Well, you know, it depends. How do you want to deal with...
Who's going to pay our pensions?
Exactly. Who's going to pay your pensions? What you want is a decent ratio between working people and people who aren't working, under 18s and over 65s. And the reality is we haven't gotten, that ratio is getting worse and worse and worse. It's one of the reasons why there's so much pressure on paying for the NHS and paying for pensions. So you've got two choices, right? You can have new migrants. Good thing about them is they tend to be over 18, and so they can go straight to paying their taxes and contributing. They tend to be net beneficiaries. But it means that, you know, the kind of the social dynamic of your country is changing. I think we also need kids in our society to, you know, actually invest in the future of the country.
Well, I've got three, so I've been doing we've been doing our bit collectively then, and I'm not rich, so I don't think it's just money. I mean, obviously it helps, and it certainly makes having children a whole lot easier.
It's happiness as well, isn't it?
It
I
is
think.
security. And do you know what?
Security, feeling good about the world.
I think you're right. I think the big thing about lockdown was that it took away all those support networks that you would normally have, whether that's from your family or even from nurseries, or, you know, your health visitor, where you actually go out and see somebody in real life, not just on Zoom. And the idea of having all of those things taken away from you and you being just on your own, well, if, you know, I have to say, rewind the time, I wouldn't have had 3 children if I thought I was doing it during the conditions of lockdown.
No, I think
being completely
it's
isolated.
interesting. It's what makes you broody, isn't it? And I would have thought what makes you broody is feeling content with the world, feeling cosy and looked after. And at the moment, it's certainly not been prevalent, has it?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think the faster we can get back to that, the better for you.
Okay, what makes you broody? That's what I want to know. GBNEWS at GBNEWS.uk.
Obviously.
What makes you broody?
Interesting. I tell you what I want to know about Joanna is clever cats. I love my cats. Clever cats.
Well, does your cat know your name, Stephen?
Well, only if he knows.
Does he say your name very often?
But this is, how do cats know your name? Because
they don't say it.
They've done a scientific experiment. This is scientists, they got 48 cats to be precise, and they showed them pictures of their owners, and they either said the right name, the owner's name, or they said the wrong name, a completely made up name. And apparently the cats who were shown a picture of their owner but the wrong name looked confused.
Gosh, that's scientific. Oh, we're all terribly impressed with that.
I'm wondering how you measure confusion. I mean, I've got 2 cats, and honestly, I have to say, I love my cats dearly, but whether they're looking confused or not confused, I honestly wouldn't be able to
My
tell.
cat has a permanent sort of feature of disdain on his face. Like, that's all that cats do. Disdain, contempt. Obviously, they think that they're in charge, and you frankly have very little role in life.
My dog looks in the mirror. Does anyone else dogs look? Yeah, my dog looks in the mirror.
I think it's
But he doesn't look in the. She doesn't look in the mirror at her. She looks in the mirror at me.
Ah, yeah.
Aww.
Yeah.
That's weird, isn't it?
I wonder.
I've never expected the animal to do that.
There's very few animals in nature that can recognise themselves. I think gorillas can, and dolphins can.
Wow, how do you know
this? That's about it. I saw a documentary about it. But yeah. Dolphins can. I'll tell you in the break how they discovered that. It's quite a bit saucy. Yeah.
Dolphins can also detect underwater mines, can't they?
I know, they can also.
Well, amazing. They were trained to put mines onto ships in the war, apparently.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Quick though, we've just got time for the mail and a Burger King selling vegan burgers.
Well, yeah, there was a Burger King in central London that went completely vegan for a whole month. I'm not sure if they were trying to test if slightly drunken people at the end of the night could tell the difference. But yeah, fake burgers, fake chicken, everything. And what some people are suggesting is that because of the carbon impact and also the cost of meat, that actually increasingly fast food, which is supposed to be sort of cheap and cheerful, will be vegan.
Oh, I wonder what their sales were like.
Yes, I wonder.
They haven't told us, but you know, I mean, in the end, the great thing about Burger King, in my view, is the chips, right? Like, Burger King chips are superior to McDonald's chips.
I don't know about that.
That's my strong view. I won't be budged. And in the end, the meat stuff, like, it's always a bit disappointing, right?
Yeah, I would have thought so too. I think veganism is taking off in a big way, and it's not just because they're getting better at doing it, aren't they?
Getting better.
Yeah.
Look, we're going to leave it there, Joanna. Polly, thank you very much indeed. Go and treat yourself to a vegan sausage in the next hour.
Or a particular sort of French fry.
Yes.
Whichever are the best.
Whichever are the best.
Bring us some back, will you?